Hey guys, welcome back to Tackling Misguided. I'm your host, Pat, and with me as always,
Lobo.
Today's episode 29, A Few Good Men, not to be confused with the movie. Though I might have stole that title from the movie.
That was a porn, right?
I'm sure there's definitely there's definitely a porn called A Few Good Men. All right, before we dive into the episode here, let's get a word from our sponsors for this episode. Savage Tacticians is a lifestyle apparel company that is 100% veteran-owned and operated to the last detail. They have everything from gym shorts, jeans, tack pants, to kick-ass designs for swim trunks that go matching with their Hawaiian shirts. But most notably for sure are their graphic tees. If you want some really well-fitting attire that looks badass as hell 100% of the time, then head over to savtac.com and check them out. Be sure to use our promo code TM10 to get 10% off your order and show some love to us as well as our friends over at Savage Tacticians.
Bulkhead Energy. Don't be a pussy. Bulkhead Energy is an energy drink that has nootropic properties to provide power, clarity, and mental acuity of a ninja with a flamethrower. We can roll the dice on gas station boner pills or a parachute pack job, but we shouldn't gamble on our energy drinks. Be the reason it takes multiple officers to arrest you. Piss off that liberal college professor. Run that belt until the barrel starts glowing on that machine gun. And show the world that drywall never stood a chance. No one gives a fuck about your shitty day. Down some Bulkhead Energy and get some.
Leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he wants to do it. Dwight D. Eisenhower. It's one of my favorite, very well-known quotes from him.
I went to a military boarding school out in Salina, Kansas called St. John's Military Institute. It was an Episcopal school, and it was their rivals since the late 1800s was Abilene, Kansas, which is where Dwight D. Eisenhower played baseball.
Really?
Yeah, so I got to fuck around where Ike was throwing the ball around. Something about Kansas. They have a lot of astronauts and Dwight D. Eisenhower.
They have a lot of astronauts.
Yeah,
and then
about
there's
being corn-fed. You just want to get shot into fucking space. But yeah, no, it's cool as shit. They had a plaque there and everything. He's
yeah.
an all-around amazing human being. Like, the racism allegations for their time was not anything beyond the pale. It was normal. But an amazing man, an amazing leader, and an amazing president, hands down. So I appreciate that quote. That's actually pretty fucking cool. That
is, and that's something that I tried to live my military experience going off of. So that brings into focus of what this episode is going to be about. It's going to be about leadership. So we're going to go back and forth with some discussion topics about, experiences that we had with good, bad leaders, general topics of what we believe makes a good leader overall. And we're going to obviously approach this from the military standpoint, because what was it that Mark said last about strategy, right? Like military strategy is basically all there is.
Every time Mark opens his mouth, an MBA falls out. That dude's smart as shit. I can't keep up with him. I would say we're gonna be using military leaders and their actions, not just in like battle, but in like some of the military leaders conquered like half the known world that we'll be talking about. But we'll be using their actions because those speak louder than words.
Exactly.
We have good quotes, but I mean, we look at all these people that we're about to talk about, and hundreds of millions of human beings lived and died under their reign or were involved with them somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so let's kick it off with something it's kind of a go back and forth. You're either on one side or you're on the other, or you believe in the latter of both. So is leadership a trait that someone is born with? Is it learned, or is it both?
All right, I'm going to get in a little bit of trouble here, but
go for it.
You are a product of your environment. And this has to do not just leadership is effective intelligence and making command decisions under pressure.
Yes.
There are certain environments that force human beings to be smarter. And those can be from like the natural elements to how we are structured in society. If you say that somebody that grew up in the jungles of Papua New Guinea is dumber because he never had running water or electricity, versus somebody who grew up in New York. You can make it anywhere if you grew up in
Fucking
New
New York.
York.
Chinatown, Little Italy.
I don't heart New York. I airplane New York. 9/11 joke.
Oh, God.
All right. So you would say that backward savage would be less of a leader because he grew up without those amenities. It's just not true. So as a human being, when you have a lack of law and you have a lack of medicine or hospital capabilities, when you are more exposed to your environments, that kills more people. More people die in these third world countries. A lot of them due to preventable stuff that we have here. Like yesterday, I was pulling a woman out of the surf. We thought she was drowning. She was ODing. This moron thought it was a great idea to go take some fentanyl and then go swimming. Now, had she done that,
You don't do that every time you go to the beach?
Yeah, all the time.
Fucking
baby,
beach day, baby.
That's what I think. I'm going to ruin some first responders' day. But what I'm saying is, effective intelligence. There is a genetic component, and this is not me being a racist. There is a genetic component to intelligence. Certain races are more intelligent. Look at the fucking SAT scores. You have Southeast Indians and you have Asians. They score off the charts. Now, that also has to do with them, their culture. But there is a certain hereditary component to leadership, but it swings both ways. Because we all know, and throughout history, there are like royal bloodlines. You'll get a badass king, bad motherfucker, and then you see his great-great-grandson lost his empire. So
fucking lost in the sauce.
I think a healthy dose of competition at a young age, in conjunction with the environment that they're subjected to, in conjunction with their life lessons, who they were taught by. Like Alexander the Great was in his 20s when he conquered all that. He had amazing generals by his side. He came from a military family.
And now you've got 20-year-olds that are in their late 20s still living with mommy and daddy.
Yeah.
We've talked about that before.
If you exclude politics out of it, because politics is just warfare by other means, but if you look at the environment that which these leaders grew up in, it was like the babies in Sparta.
Yeah.
Like nature was selecting these people. So I do think that, but you can also have it backwards too. You can have people that grew up in a very coddled environment, such as New York fucking city, and you could get a whiz bang fucking military leader out of that, just from the different dynamics in his life. But
so, and one of the things I've always said too, when it comes to, all right, so say you're not a born leader, it can be learned. You can learn to be a leader, and you can hone in on those skills as you go. You can always improve.
Yeah.
Right. You take a bad leader, you can make him a good leader. You take a good leader, you can make him a great leader. You take a great leader, and you can make him a stellar, top tier 1 fucking leader, right?
Yeah.
So I think it can be both, right? So I've always felt, and do not get snippy with me on this one.
Oh no.
So I listened to a Jocko podcast, right, where he's talking a little bit about like him coming in. I know,
Brian, I got all my hatred for Jocko out with you.
But something he said stuck. So he was talking about how he started. He was never stellar at like sports. He wasn't stellar in school.
Same.
But the one thing that he always kind of went back to, even growing up as a kid, is he always tried to put himself in that leadership position with most of the things that he did. And I even with me,
which is awesome. Like I don't have an issue.
That's something that's more born, but then you take a guy that has kind of just sat in the back seat, right? He flew under the radar for everything, right? He wasn't the guide in fucking graduation, right? He wasn't a squad leader, and he just kind of went under the radar. But then once he hit that wall where it's time to make a decision, you got to show who you are. It comes out to fruition at that time.
So when people say you're born, I would say raised.
Yeah.
But I would also say people think that you're as soon as you hit 18, you're a man, and now you're in charge of all your own actions. What I would say is that Jocko Willink was more adept at understanding the positions of the leaders around him.
Yeah.
There are very few. This shit ended in antiquity, but there are very few leaders with good ideas. What you have are leaders that are able to understand the qualities and traits of the good leaders around them and have the ability to enforce or basically affect goals with their subordinates. And it's tying the two together in both a societal or cultural or social means while not
Yeah.
looking like a jackass. I don't hate Jocko Willink. I don't.
Oh, I was playing off the SEALs thing.
I just have a problem with white soft seals. I love JSOC seals. I absolutely admire them. But white soft seals are just fucking trash. I am sick of the hero worship, and that's another thing that you and me were bantering back and forth on one guy that we're going to talk about. And I'm kind of tired of people being like, oh, he was a good dude, he did this, and I was like, no, the guy was a piece of shit. So I like to call it how it is. Hero worship's over. The moment that you can look at somebody that you admire and you can identify their faults, you don't have to go out and be like, oh, this guy's a piece of shit and crucify him. But you should understand that like a lot of stuff is sugar coated.
Yeah. And then again, a lot with the list of guys that we're going to go through. But a lot of that's kind of buried in. All right. So what's that? What's the one quote that's, history is written by the victor, right?
Yeah.
So all the guys we're going to talk about, for the most part, we won. So there's this line of propaganda that is formed behind them over what that was just the one.
Millennia,
the one was
thousands of years.
100 years for him, right? At this point, over 100 years. So it's like
because you're taking secondhand accounts, or you're taking things that were written on paper that could be changed instead of seeing what's on TV. Yep. Like right now, like we have our nursing home. White House. So you look at like these politicians.
Thank you, Secretary Booty Juice.
Yeah, Booty Juice. Yeah, fuck that dude, and also fuck Mitch McConnell. These clowns. How is it that these octogenarians, these 80-year-old people, are useless in society? They're fucking useless outside of going to church and seeing them with their experiential learning, but they're useless. We put them in homes. They enjoy retirement. Nah, motherfucker, they got codes to the nukes. These people are literally there are people that do not understand weapons and do not understand vaginas, and they're making laws on both of them.
Yeah.
It pisses me off. But sorry,
I digress. Dang, I thought I was unlocking the refrigerator.
If you want good leadership qualities from Jocko, just look at Lean Sigma 6. That's pretty much what it is. It's a business leadership.
Okay, I've got one more rant that I want to hear you go off on this.
God.
David Goggins.
Goggins? I'm not going to hate on David Goggins.
Oh, I don't hate on him. I just think
I just think you're a fucking idiot if you're like, I don't know what a pool is. I'm going to go join the Navy SEALs. The other thing is there are great SEAL commanders. There are great SEAL commanders that did not write any books, that did not go off and scream, who's going to carry the boats?
It's
fucking trash.
It's been a religious line for me lately. Who's going to carry the boats?
Who's going to carry this dick?
Don't forget the logs.
Oh my God. So,
okay, I get what he meant by boats. Ribs. What the hell did he mean by logs?
I don't know.
Fucking PT log?
What I can say is this, is when I am talking about physical fitness, and the guy is a rock star, right?
He's a stud.
He's not an Olympian. So if I want the best of the best of the best when it comes to the thought of defeating adversity, to the motivation, that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm going to look at Michael motherfucking Phelps, the Aquaman himself. I'm going to look at, even though a lot of people shit on her, Simone Biles. I will look at these fucking amazing human beings. Oh, great, you're a SEAL. Great, you didn't know what a boat was before you got into a fucking special operations unit that uses primarily boats. I think there's a lot of hero worship, and I wouldn't say that I dislike or hate these people. There are better people out there, and I am kind of a little irritated that some of these amazing leaders, I can't remember his name. He was a DevGru command master chief he was in Dev for 17 years. He spoke so well. He was an amazing leader, and there's not a fucking thing out there on him. Primarily because in SOF, you are what are called you're called a quiet professional, and SEALs are anything. Well, again, I shit on SEALs. DevGru are quiet professionals, some of them, except for the guy who shot Bin Laden or allegedly shot Bin Laden, whatever.
Yeah, there's a whole thing out about him right now.
But yeah, you look at Ranger RRD, you look at the CCTs, you look at 24th STS, and they're quiet. Green Berets, for the most part, are quiet professionals. Marine Raiders are quiet professionals, unless you fuck your cousin. You know who I'm talking about. Piece of shit ripping off wheels.
Yep.
Fuck that guy. Sorry, we're going off topic, but
The rants.
Jocko
The
is
rants.
Jocko is awesome when it comes to business leadership, which is Lean Sigma 6 in the belt system.
Yep.
Goggins is somebody who can motivate you. He's a minority. He is a freak of nature. There are certain aspects within him that wind up appealing to certain sections of society. It's the same way that you have college kids that are easy to, I shouldn't say manipulate because Goggins doesn't manipulate. Goggins exists. Now, he doesn't, I don't think, fully understand like the concept of being a combatant commander like McCraven. Like,
Yeah.
I don't, on a personal level, political level, I don't like Admiral McCraven that much. As a military leader, he's probably in my top 5. He is a very intelligent individual. I wish he had stayed in the military. He ran SOCOM for a long time. Just look up Admiral McCraven's speeches, and he does his own speeches. He wrote a book called Spec Ops. It's an amazing fucking book. You have to read it at MARSOC selection. But you look at how many
You're reading shit like that at selection, and then the commandant's reading list had everybody poops on it.
Yeah,
You're
well,
reading that. I'm reading that.
the difference is that McCraven was assessed and selected and had to beat out other people. He had to survive within a very rigid state. The commandant and the sergeant major of the Marine Corps, they're pieces of shit. Fuck those guys. I have more respect for the guy that's going to carry the boats, the lance corporal with the machine gun. I have more respect for that corporal with the fucking sasser. I have more respect for the rifleman who screams Doc when his buddy's hit. I don't give a fuck about some goddamn commandant. They're all fucking political retards anyway.
Yeah, once you hit a certain, all right. So that's
okay.
That is a leadership.
Military
tangent for me in
leadership
itself.
is straight up fucking Scooby-Doo villains. That's what they are. They're fucking politicians and Scooby-Doo villains.
I always said it this way. So, and I know, and you know who you are too. I had a lot of great staff NCOs, right? We'll stick with the enlisted side for this one. Had a lot of great staff NCOs, and I had more bad examples of staff NCOs, right?
Yeah.
So it was, and I would watch this happen. I would watch somebody go from a stellar sergeant that really, he was there in the trenches, he was turning fucking wrenches, he was out in the
participating
he was
and delegating.
his boys, he was with his guys all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then something happened when he picked up staff.
Yes.
Light bulb just shut off.
Team guys too.
Because it became at that point, and that's really no fault to their own.
He chose his career over us.
Exactly, and that was the one thing that held me up from wanting to stay in. Because, like I said before, I was in below zone for staff when I was getting out. You know, had I stayed in another year, I would have been a staff sergeant. I never cared about being a staff sergeant at that point because I watched what happened. Now, and you hear all these people being like, "I'm gonna stay in and I'm gonna make
a difference,
changes. I'm gonna make differences," and then they're the first one to give up the respect for the lower enlisted guys, their NCOs, and then start focusing solely on their career.
That's absolutely true.
So, and that is definitely not to say that there are not stellar gunnies out there, the staff sergeants, gunnies, even first sergeants. That's not to say that there's not stellar guys out there like that. And I had a lot of them, but I had a lot more bad than good. But there's something that I wanted to throw in here.
Are we talking about dickhead first?
No. Before we, we will. Before we get into that. Okay, so leadership styles that from the NCO side. So when you got out, what rank were you when you got out?
I was a staff sergeant.
You were a staff sergeant?
Yep. All my peers are right now master sergeants or looking at master guns in like a year.
A little bit ahead of me.
A little bit ahead. But
all my guys are like looking at gunny now.
Yeah.
But so one of the things I wanted to talk about, because you could see this at the most basic level, you see this when somebody picks up a corporal, right? When someone picks up E4 corporal, you see where you kind of have a choice, and everyone thinks it's two ways. You can either be that approachable, chill leader that everyone's going to walk the fuck over, or you can be that bulldog that all he cares about is pain, and pain is gain. You're not approachable. You don't solve problems. You just yell and use your fucking voice all the time.
So most of the Marine Corps.
Exactly. And that
You
was
forgot retarded,
That
too.
was a common misconception, is that, oh, I've got to be a fucking bulldog as an NCO. I have to be a fucking bulldog. No, there's a balance. And that is something you figure out from the good leaders.
You revert back to your known, which is your skill, 1,000 level skill, or your baseline. Say, like, GPS is great, but we learn map, protractor, compass. But in a pinch, you revert back to tap, rack, bang. You revert back to snap to attention.
You revert back to your basics.
If you don't have enough exposure to leadership, then that's all you know. So one of the things I would say is that the more intelligent a leader is, chances are, and I say intelligent by effective intelligence. I'm not saying the guy's smart as shit on paper. When you are experienced to a larger group of people, then you can take on more traits. You get more exposure. So like a leader who's been through, and this pissed me off more than anything, a leader who has been through just Marine Corps PME, was a drill instructor, stayed as a drill instructor, and then wound up as a battalion sergeant major in special operations with no assessment and selection, was a fucking nightmare to deal with, versus having an officer that had been through college. He had I think a philosophy, or it was an antiquity philosophy degree. It was basically like Stoicism.
Yeah.
This individual then got a bachelor's in adult education with an emphasis on educational psychology. He talked about Bloom's taxonomy. He talked about the different methods to which human beings learned. And this dude, without having to make any sweeping changes, by the way he would interact with his staff, he would be able to influence people and train them at the same time. He never once lost. He did lose his shit one time. He went from 0 to hood in like 60 seconds, but he's a great commander. He's a black guy. He had to beat a stereotype. I said he had a master's. I think he may have had 2 bachelors, but his education wasn't all on paper. The dude was a reservist, enlisted, and then wound up like going in reverse. So like enlisted, reservist, infantry, sniper, recon, MARSOC. Now this motherfucker's a doctor. He is a fucking doctor. Now, he would always forget to zip up his fly. You have little quirks with different leaders, but he wasn't a cancerous person. So I would say toxic. But you have all these leaders that we're going to be talking about were not isolated individuals. They grew up in societies, and that definitely changed and molded who they were as a person. But at the end of the day, if you don't have experience, you're going to revert back to your baseline level of knowledge. And if you do that as a Marine and your only experience is fucking boot camp and screaming at people, that's what you're going to revert back to. And that's why like all our enlisted academies that we stole from the Nazis, because we fucking did, are trash, because we don't have adult higher education in there. There's no thought process on having, what's the terminology, like a flipped classroom, having in Bloom's taxonomy, they basically tell you on, I'll remember it because I'm blanking, but it's a way that you learn by the teacher posing a question. They call it a guided discussion in the military, and it's trash because it's not, because you have some fucking inbred retard up there being like, all right, doggone it, let's do a guided discussion. And it's basically like watching the RNC on TV. It's just fucking garbage. Sorry.
All right. On that note, now we're going to get to a few good men and bad ones. So the
military,
one,
not the porn.
Yeah, not the porn, guys. Not the porn.
Gay porn.
If that's what you're here for, tune out and go to Pornhub.
Hey, $20 is $20.
God damn it. All right. So first one. Now, and this is the one that I know how you feel about it. So let me get through my spiel.
No, you go ahead.
And then you jump in. All right. So the 2 that I did, we're going to start with my first one. Winston Churchill. All right. So candidate to lieutenant colonel as a officer when he was in the military. So just a note about him that I put in here that I really like this part. And this is about his military service, not as a politician. So after resigning his commission at 25 years old from the British Army in 1899, he joined the South African Light Horse, a regular cavalry unit, to fight in the Boer War. which was 1899 to 1902. He was someone that if you fucked with him once, there wouldn't be a second time for you, basically, is what he got captured by them as a POW. Then he came back and joined the South African Light Horse to basically get fucking revenge on these motherfuckers. So a great leader possesses the admirable qualities of courage and humility. That's a huge one for me when it comes to being leaders, humility. They will express their views when needed, but listen to others' perspectives and ideas. You must be willing to work hard and sacrifice to reach goals and give it your all the fucking time. Never succumb to defeat. One must push through whatever challenges they face to show your men that resilience is key. So those are my takeaways from Winston Churchill as his military career, and pushing into his political stuff. I didn't even write this down because everybody fucking knows it. He was one of the key leaders during World War II. Gave out some more than stellar speeches during World War II, and did amazing things too as a politician. Now let's hear the reverse.
So and this is not a competition between the both of us.
I know.
We hang out together. We're friends. But
and and the stuff that you brought up, it is stuff that I knew about him, but
some
of it anyways.
The second Anglo-Boer War is what we're talking about. And the first one, the British got their ass whooped. This is where the term commando came from. Watch some of the previous episodes about the Boer Wars. The second Boer War is what is considered as the first modern war. Mm-hmm. Even though the American Civil War had all the same properties, it wasn't to the technological scale that the Boer War was, because we're talking about 1860s versus late 1800s. Yep. So
right on the cusp of 19.
The Brits lost the first war against the Boers, the Dutch farmers that were down there in South Africa, who just kind of wanted to be left alone. In true British fashion, and this is just British in general, these pieces of shit came in and took over the local area, like they did with Malaysia, like they did with India, like they did with us, and we kicked their teeth in and they fucked off. But Australia, Canada, they were imperialists. Is that a fault on Winston Churchill? He grew up as a byproduct of his time. He was extremely racist, even for that time, to the point where the Nazis were attempting to get the Jews out of Germany. And when the war broke out, and before and during the World War II, millions and millions of Jews, the Axis powers said, hey, we will deport them to X, Y, and Z, United States, United Kingdom, France. We'll export these people because we're going to kill them. And Winston Churchill said, fucking no. Winston Churchill had firsthand knowledge of the Holocaust and chose to do nothing. He actively fucked up the Polish defense. He was a good orator. I'll give him that. But he was a fucking piece of shit when it came to being a military commander. In the Boer War, the first use of actual what we consider as modern concentration camps. So the Brits are like, we're getting our ass kicked. We can't do this. Okay, we have a lot of men with guns. Let's go ahead and just round up people. They rounded up women and children of all the fighters, and then they started starving them. They literally committed fucking genocide. Same thing the Germans did in Namibia. And we
did talk about that during the Boer War. Yeah, we did. Yeah.
So he's one of those guys that did that. He wound up, what I will say is he wound up being cool with Lord Mountbatten. He got smoked by the IRA, but he started basically special operations, modern special operations. The same standards that we have can be traced back to the British Royal Marine Commandos, the ruck marching, the selection, the training. And that's where the term came from. He was not the worst leader. Neville, the guy before him, was a fucking idiot and a pacifist and sucked ass.
Which is what put a lot of Europe into that position, anyways. During the early days of,
he was kind of an alcoholic, and what he did have was the ability.
He was not kind of an alcoholic. He was a drunk.
He was a drunk.
He was a drunk.
He would prioritize certain things that for us would seem alien, like royalty. He would always put these fucking British royal motherfuckers in charge of stuff, but they had no qualifications. Eventually, he fucking allowed people that knew what they were doing to do stuff. But it's it's like we were saying about who wins wars. It's not the better military. It's who's the least incompetent. And
Yep.
Winston Churchill faced a lot of very incompetent people. Like if you look at how the Nazis and the Italians and the other fascist powers of the Axis fucked up, it's not who did it better. It's who fucked up least. And then the Soviet Union with Stalin's a different story because they just basically fed people into a wood chipper. But we look at overall Winston Churchill, good orator, in a time of almost certain defeat. Yeah, he said, we'll fight him on the beaches. We'll fight him here. We'll fight him there. He was voted out almost immediately when the war ended because he was a fucking idiot. Like he fucked up a lot. And on top of the racism, the drunkenness, and then just overall just incompetence. Now, that's not to say that he defeated the Nazis. That's a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to leave it at that because a lot of people are going to not like it when I say that he was a fucking idiot. On a scale of 1 being a complete fucking buffoon and 10 being a fucking rock star like Alexander the Great, I put him at about a 5. He's in the middle. He is famous because he defeated the Nazis.
Literally a product of his time.
He was a product of his time.
A product of his time and situations that were going on in the world during that time. So that was his shining moment.
But when it comes to his service in South Africa, he was a piece of shit. He was complicit in genocide, and he was extremely racist. I don't know how I would have been back then. Now we have all these ideas, and I can look them up, and I can learn things. You are a product of your time. But at the end of the day, I put him 5. He was incompetent, but he also rose to the occasion. I personally don't like him, but I can understand that you do take the good from your mentors and you kind of excuse the bad. I can't excuse this fucking racist genocide down there. And it fucked up the world. He sent millions of Indians to go die in World War II on places that he wouldn't send white people to. He basically said, Jews, you can fend for your fucking self. When people were talking about, should we do something to stop the Holocaust? He didn't do a fucking thing. It took his subordinates to basically equip partisans behind the lines, which people say the Russians broke the back of the Nazis. The cumulative effects of World War II that broke the Nazis was a 2-front war and massive amounts of partisan action on the parts of occupied territories. I would say he was very pro special operations, and we can owe some of that stuff to him. Had you had a better leader that was in his shoes, it would have been a lot better for the outcome. But overall, a 5 out of 10.
Okay.
But the thing that is most important is I respect your opinion. So like when somebody says something, they need to know everything about it, the details, the nitty gritty.
So, and that's why we do this, because see, my opinion from him is generally, History Channel, history books, everything that is taught to us through the years, not really diving more into the nooks and crannies of where you start seeing that you get through the shell and you start seeing the man.
Because all the people
real man.
I'm going to be talking about did amazing things, but they were all horrible fucking human beings.
Well, that brings the next one up.
I actually kind of, I'm going to get
horrible.
shit on it. I'm going to get, oh no, he was a terrible human being, but I love him. I fucking love him. I'm sorry.
And I'm going to mention the one thing, because I put that in here, the one thing that you said when we were talking about it. So the next one, John Pershing. Blackjack, commander of American Expeditionary Forces, Western Front, 1917 to 1918. And I'm a sucker for World War I stuff. Growing up, I loved World War II, and learning about it and everything like that. And I feel like one of the things that's most slept on when you're learning about key leadership and things that happened prior to World War II is World War I. Like, there's not that many movies made about it. There's some documentaries and stuff like that. And granted, it's the time frame too. There wasn't a lot of film like there was with World War II. But I digress. So John Pershing, absolutely bloodthirsty, which we love to see.
Love a bloodthirsty psychopath.
Ranked as one of the most influential military leaders of his time. Nicknamed Blackjack. I really couldn't figure out like a substantial reason why he was nicknamed Blackjack. There wasn't much.
He led black troops.
Oh, there it is.
It's a backhanded compliment.
Ah,
The one
very
thing
well.
that I could say about Pershing is he wasn't racist. And for that, okay, he wasn't overtly racist when it came to discrimination. Everybody at that time was racist.
Well, yeah, look at the times.
But he was called Blackjack Pershing because he was he commanded mainly colored troops. At the time, it was called colored.
Anyways, after his victory in World War I, he went on to mentor the next generation of influential generals that came to fruition during World War II. So Marshall, Eisenhower, Bradley, McNair, Patton, and MacArthur were the top ones that he mentored and led into that conflict. My favorite quote from him, the deadliest, and this is one that we all fucking heard, the deadliest weapon is a Marine and his rifle. Follow up with, a competent leader can get efficient service from poor troops, while on the contrary, an incapable leader can demoralize the best of troops. And that literally goes back to everything we talked about in the beginning of this when it comes to leadership styles and things of that nature.
I can talk a little bit about some of the really cool shit because I was on a deployment in Southeast Asia, and I could tell you a wild thing that tied back to him. But the most important portion of this is what you explained about how he mentored and influenced our military generals. Mm-hmm. He actually did. So from the I believe it was the Spanish-American War all the way to World War II, he influenced a good chunk of our military brain housing group for our command. In World War I, the American forces were like fucking butters from South Park. We came in late to the game, fucking with one sock.
I'm in danger.
I'm helping, comparatively. Now, people shit on America for World War I. We were a fucking neutral country. We didn't have a dog in the fight. Why the fuck were we going to go mess with it? I fucking don't like Europeans. Everybody's like, I find them being Christian, most of them are not. I find them being democratic, most of them are not. And then, the rights that they provide in a liberal democracy, they don't.
And we helped them out so much through the years, and they still talk shit about us.
Yeah, fuck them. Americans are racist. I've literally seen you froth at the mouth when you see a gypsy. I fucking hate Europeans. Most of my family, like near family, are Europeans. They live in the Netherlands. They live in other countries in Europe.
Well, you were raised in Europe, weren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to give up too much of my Google passwords, but yeah, I grew up over there. So
I dabble.
I dibble. One of the cool things was I was on an island in southern Philippines. It was a rebel-held island called Jolo, Jolo, in the Sulu archipelago. And during the Spanish-American War, we took the Philippine Islands from the Spanish.
Yes.
So these poor Filipinos traded one European power for an American power. They were just getting shit on. Good for them for fighting back. People talk about our actions in the Philippine insurgency. Some positives that came out of it, the 1911. Blackjack Pershing took 100 guerrillas. They were called Moros, and he had them dig 99 holes, and he shot every one of them in the fucking head and dumped pig's guts on them because they're Muslim. To this day, they talk about Japanese buried treasure. So we were out there teaching the Filipino force reconnaissance guys how to do hydrographic surveys. So you go out on rope lines, and then you go down, you grab some sand. There's knots that, as you're kicking down, that measure in meters, I believe, or feet. And you count how many knots before you hit the ground. And then you come up, and a guy has basically some sort of marker. I think it's like not chalk, but he has a glass plate, and he's basically around his neck, and he's writing the depth. And you're doing that's the old school way of doing hydrographic surveys. And the villagers were convinced we were searching for a Japanese treasure that was buried there by Pershing's men. I like the fact that he, even though he was a bloodthirsty psychopath, he dealt with an insurgency on the best level that you could. The only way to destroy an insurgency is to cripple the ideology and then have it replaced, whether that's with collaborators or completely wiping them out. The Romans with the zealots, the Jewish zealots, the Romans killed them all. That's how they defeated that. The insurgencies in Australia against the Aboriginals. They just fucking killed them all. The Chechen insurgency took decades. The Russians basically found other Chechens to do their dirty work for them. They replaced them. They replaced the ideology.
Yep.
I like the fact that he was like, okay, you killed my soldiers, lines all these people up, shoots them in the fucking head, dumps them in there, and says, you're going to go tell all your friends. It was how you had to deal with these people. And it wouldn't have been bad. It would have been bad had they just been like your regular insurgents. But these were, they weren't at the time Islamist fundamentalists, but they were also preying upon the local population. So the Filipino insurgency, I tip my hat to anybody that looks at their oppressor and says, fuck you, I'm going to fight. And I may not agree with their ideology at all, but it's
kind of how we were born.
Yeah, it's the human struggle of fucking throwing the yoke off of you and being like, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. A lot of the Filipino insurgents were awesome. Like I think one of the last names was Aguilar Aquino, the modern founder of the Philippines. But you look at all this stuff, and I can be like, yo, was he a little bit racist? A little bit. In the Spanish-American War, he commanded African-American troops. That's where he got his nickname. I can say that he was kind of bloodthirsty. But you're in the fucking military. You're not out there to win people over and give them
hearts
hugs.
and minds.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Hugs and kisses.
Fucking 20 years in Afghanistan and Iraq, and we still haven't fucking figured that out.
Nope. No, we're not 20 years anymore.
2003.
Oh, we're out now.
Neighbor.
All right.
Let's
let's move on to the next one. All right, because I know that you're gonna talk a lot about these guys. So, what's the next
I won't
one?
go too in depth. For me, I picked four. Pick four. Yeah. Or admit you fucked up.
Wait,
or
it's
draw
not Tuesday
25.
yet. It's not the first Tuesday of the month yet. Gotta get my scratch offs.
Genghis Khan or Genghis Khan. Temujin. Everybody knows about the Mongols, how they fucking had the largest land empire on earth, bigger than the Romans, bigger than anybody. It's insane to think it was all done in horseback at the age when firearms still weren't a thing. We're talking about bows and arrows.
Bows, arrows, shields, swords.
So
literal armor.
If you look at North Central Asia, you look at the Mongolian steppe, which is just around where the Gobi Desert is. Very inhospitable. It's steppe. It's just flat grasslands. It's fucking rough. And that's what we were saying about earlier, the product of your environment. If you grow up and you're one of 10 children and you survive, you're the strongest motherfucker. And there were tens of thousands of Mongols that were like that. What I can appreciate about this dude, Genghis Khan, was his ability to rule. So not so much fighting, because he did a lot of horrible shit. Like the siege of Baghdad it is the largest loss of human life within a sustained conflict, like a battle. Like they think over 1 million people were beheaded. They had pyramids of heads. It smelled so bad.
That's one we never did that episode, but we were going to do an episode on the siege.
We're going to we will do an episode on the siege of Baghdad.
I think it was around the time that we did Grozny that we were talking about doing that.
I'll get my Hank Hill voice out. We'll have all these little euphemisms. It'll be great. We can just talk about pyramids of severed heads. The thing that I can appreciate about Genghis Khan is he was very big on being polite. So he would send dignitaries or he'd send emissaries. So he'd send a writer to this guy and be like, hey, you either become a vassal or you get to keep your religion. That was a cool thing. The Mongols let you keep your religion. They didn't convert you to shit. They actually converted. It was Khanates. They either most of them converted to Islam and some to Christianity, but it wasn't a thing for them. They didn't make it their whole personality. Yeah. Looking at you, fucking boat shoes dads. So when we look at it, the Mongols were big on emissaries. And every time they would send somebody, one of three things happened. They were either taken care of when they got there, and they were told no, and then the Mongols came and fucked them up. The second one is they would show up, They would say yes. They became a vassal state. They had to supply troops to the Mongol military. They had to pay taxes to them. The Mongols basically took over and governed. The Mongols are the reason why, like, the postal service, how postage works.
Wait, so like missing packages all the time?
Yeah, that's them. 100%.
100%.
Wearing their cuts, riding around with fucking bows and arrows. They had a system. Their system of, I'm not going to go into their system of government, but the way that they governed was probably until now one of the more proficient ways of governing human beings, as far as everything from resources to rights for minorities, rights for women. It was revolutionary to a lot of these places, and they were going up against Muslims and Christians.
Yeah.
And so they allowed them to, I said it before, they allowed them to keep their religion. But if the third option, when he sent an emissary and you killed his emissaries, he would sack your fucking city. He would kill every man, every woman that posed a threat. He would.
So at least he gave you a chance.
Yeah, I mean, you're a dickhead invading other people's countries, but he was able to, in his leadership, he understood that meritocracy was more important than blood. So just because you were his family member didn't mean you got to command an army.
That didn't mean that you were competent enough to take his place.
Yeah, you don't get shit for free.
Exactly.
There was no Hunter Biden for him. So when he winds up going out and taking on all these different empires, and he did lose some, like he lost to Vietnam. Like the Vietnamese beat the shit out of the Mongols. The Mongols tried some other places to go, but they would do these giant offensives and take them. But the way that it reminded me a lot of like Sun Tzu. They're very basic military concepts structured around how he was raised in his environment. Be polite to strangers. If you want somebody to be controlled, there's some give and take. Let them keep their religion, but they're still under the Mongol Khanate. So out of the 1 to 10 scale, I put Genghis Khan at about an 8 or 9.
Okay.
The next one I have is Joseph Broz Tito. He looks like a fucking Hanna-Barbera character, like an extra from fucking, what's that, a Korean, MASH. He looks like an extra from MASH, the Korean War comedy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you look at him, so Broz Tito, he was this. We're talking World War II era. He started off as his major portion as a partisan. So he was being armed by the Allies and the Soviets, and he was hands down the best partisan commander in World War II. He is the reason they broke the Germans and the Romanians and the other fascist countries in the Balkans. He had the largest army for partisans. He took the fight to the Nazis. He
love to see it.
He was a communist, but he was a communist for just that area. And I'll talk about how he controlled Yugoslavia, and I'll talk about the non-alignment movement that happened in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, I think up until the 80s. He was a communist, but Joseph Stalin tried to kill him like 20 times. So after World War II, Broz Tito took over Yugoslavia. So he had 11 different ethnicities, like Serbs, Croats, Bosniaks, Slovaks, Slovenes, Albanians, Northern Macedonians, Montenegrins. He just had so many different people that all 3 different religions, Catholicism, Islam, and Orthodoxy. Well, Sunni, Islam, Orthodox Christian, Catholic Christians. All fucking hated each other. We know what happened in the 90s in Yugoslavia. Some absolute terrible ethnic cleansing. He kept the peace. That dude was like the Hispanic mom with a chocolate. Like he made sure that shit was fucking tight. Like a functioning government. So they had an education system. They had an economy. Yes, he was a one-man dictator for communists. Joseph Stalin tried to assassinate him so many times that eventually, I think he sent back one dude and he's like, stop sending people to kill me or I'm going to kill you. Like there were so many assassination attempts. Under the table, he was allies with the United States. So a lot of the Soviet equipment that was given to him before Yugoslavia broke away from the USSR in relations-wise, they weren't the same country. he basically he's like, well, fuck you. I'm going to help these guys out. He gave us surface to air platforms. He gave us air platforms. He gave us all these different things that we could reverse engineer. So we would buy military equipment from Tito, and we would figure out, what weapons worked against different vehicles, what their capabilities, what their limitations were. He gave us so much. He also was really big in intelligence. He helped us immensely with that. And he was the father of the non-aligned movement. So during the Cold War, you had the Warsaw Pact, the Eastern Bloc, those fucking buck-toothed, cross-eyed fucking commies. And then you had the Western Bloc, which was NATO, and anybody that we would topple and install an anti-fascist dictator. We did that all over Central and South America. If you boiled babies, but you said you hated communism, we would support you. He was like, hey, bro, I don't want to do, I'm not a piece of shit, so I'm not a communist. I'm not a fucking control freak and a pedophile, so I don't want to be fucking NATO. I want to do my own thing. And he created what was called the non-alignment movement. So he took countries, and this is on different continents, like Africa, South America, Asia. He took different countries that didn't want to be in the pocket of the Soviets or the pocket of the United States and NATO, and he created his own thing. And it was pretty cool. He was, towards the end,
essentially a bunch of neutral countries.
He stressed neutrality. That's the one thing I can respect. I mean, he fucking murdered tens of thousands of people. He gave the orders for killing shit tons of POWs. He was responsible for a lot of war.
Can't be a prisoner of war if you're not a prisoner.
He was also a Casanova. This dude was, if you look at him, you're like, if he was younger, I could see he's hot. But he was a ladies' man. He was a ladies' man. I can appreciate, Winston Churchill got second base with deep throating his cigars all the time. Genghis Khan had 50 wives. There are certain quirks that people have with their with who they are,
with
as a
their
person.
status,
Yes.
and
so
position.
Joseph Broz Tito was amazing, and he kept Yugoslavia together. I say amazing because it's impressive. Guy was an asshole. He was a psychopath too, but it was more impressive. And I would put him at a 9 out of 10. Moshe Dayan is the next one. He was he's an Israeli. I think he's a native-born Israeli. He was born in Israel, if I'm correct. I may be wrong. But you will notice him because he wears an eye patch. He looks like a Bond villain. Seriously, he wears a fucking eye patch. So,
and that's the surprise with this episode. Well, you guys are all seeing this while we're talking about it because we're throwing up the pictures of all these people as we're talking about them. So you guys are all going to see this too. So currently, it's right there. I think
he doesn't have to close one eye when he's shooting. So Moshe Dayan is important because he was the architect.
This is my good eye.
This is my good eye. 2 is 1, 1 is none. Moshe Dayan, again, he was kind of a we'll put the bat out there. He was a sociopath. When he became a politician, he kind of turned into a piece of shit. But before that, when he was a military leader, he was instrumental in multiple conflicts that were going on with Israel since their inception in 1947. In the 50s, the Suez Crisis. He was the architect of the 6-Day War. A lot of military leaders get credit for shit that they didn't do because they were in charge, just like our battalion commander or different battalion commanders, different officers. The police chief never steps out of his office, but task force takes down a warrant or a pedophile ring. He goes up in front of the cameras and you associate him with that. Not talking shit about, but that's just military.
That's the way that it works.
That's organized leadership. Moshe Dayan was instrumental because he would combine intelligence collection methods from the Shin Bet and the Mossad, and then he would take the military aspect of it. He also took a lot of former commanders because Israel is their military and most of their government is secular. They're Jewish, but they're not Orthodox or Hasidic Jews. And they're also not atheists. He wasn't a leftist like Ben Gurion. Ben Gurion was a leftist, raging, fucking frothing at the mouth, fucking commie. I can respect the things that dude did to create his nation, but he was also a pussy. Moshe Dayan was not a pussy. And Moshe Dayan would basically conduct a very interesting method of warfare, relying a lot on intelligence, human intelligence, and then analytics and prediction. Like he was able to say, hey, there's only 5 or 6 roads in the Negev desert that lead into the Sinai Peninsula, that lead into Egypt. These are arteries. Let's bypass them. Let's figure out how we can get wheeled vehicles through the dunes and deserts where people don't live. He sent guys out to, it was during the rallies, the off-road rallies in Las Vegas. Like if you watch the movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, where the reporters out there reporting, there are actually Mossad agents out there figuring out how, because America's answer at technological advancement is throw money at it. They went out there and saw a bunch of good old boys doing fucking LSD and smoking weed and driving, off-road driving. And they're like, oh yeah, man, to get over the dunes, we just let a little bit of air out of the tire. And then he sent that back, and the Israelis were like, that makes sense. It's physics. You have more surface area. That's literally, there were some other things that were involved.
Yeah.
I'm condensing a very long topic into this, but he took intelligence and he used it instead of being like, I'm the fucking king of the castle, king of the castle. He actually would listen to his intelligence operatives. He was a hard guy to work with. And he gets a lot of shit for the 1973 Yom Kippur War, the October War, which Israel still won, but they kind of seen it as an embarrassment because, I mean, if you get sucker punched by a retard, you're going to feel a little bit embarrassed. And the thing is people give the Israelis way too much credit. It's very easy to beat the fuck out of, like, if I'm a grown ass man, I can beat the shit out of 20 toddlers. Easy. That's kind of like what it was because of the Arabs that were fighting against the Israelis. They were astronomically incompetent, beyond the pale incompetent, worse than like a fucking cashier at Walmart. They were fucking terrible. And they were almost like Hitler playing with pieces that they didn't actually have. You'd be like, I'm going to move this army here. Well, you don't have an army. They got destroyed. So all your planning, everything was fucked from Jump Street with the Arabs. Moshe Dayan was also instrumental in using counterintelligence. He was really good at propaganda. When the Egyptians are like, well, we're winning. And then he's like, all right, we'll go bomb this city. Sends them in. There's Israeli jets bombing an Egyptian city. It's just not the truth. What we see right now with the American right in Ukraine, like that fucking douchebag Tucker Carlson, he's sitting there going like, Ukraine's losing. The fuck they are. Bro, stop sucking Putin's dick. Like, understand that there is propaganda. It's an information war. And
it always is.
But he understood that, and he was able to use that. So under Moshe Dayan, they seized the Golan Heights. They took the rest of Jerusalem. They tripled Israel's landmass when they took the Sinai. Moshe Dayan is the reason why the military and intelligence apparatus of Israel is as powerful and effective as it is. Basically based on him. There's a couple other guys that were more instrumental, but they were on the intelligence portion of it. And he was a good fucking leader. Like he fought. He was a combatant. Yeah. He wasn't like Mad Dog Mattis sitting at a desk. I don't like Mattis. I'm going to throw that out there. Marines, you can hate on me. There are plenty of good Marine generals out there, but do not fall prey to the fucking rubber dildo that is the Marine Corps fucking propaganda.
Rubber green
dildo. All right, and the last one, El Cid. El Cid has been rated, and when they rate people and as being a military commander, who is the most successful? This dude he was a knight in the Iberian Spanish conflict with the Moors. The Moors were a African Muslim invasion. They were under, I can't remember what caliphate it was, but they invaded from North Africa where Morocco is. Yeah. In Morocco, Algerian area, and they invaded in through Spain. They took most of Spain and most of Portugal. At this time, the Europeans are they're fucking all their sisters and cousins, and they're trying to keep their bloodlines and stuff, and they were fighting each other instead of fighting an invader, and they basically took most of that area of Europe. It was under Muslim control for hundreds of years. El Cid was a Christian knight, and he wound up initially there were within the Muslims down there, they were fighting each other too. Yeah. They were for influence between the caliphs, between the different rulers. it's not emirates or sultans, but it's something like that. They were
Yeah.
divided. And he went, and what he did is he was a mercenary leader, and he would lead armies. He would fight with the Muslims against the Muslims. He also fought against other Christians. But and I'm not doing him. I'm doing him an injustice by talking, because his achievements, his victories, he pulled off some of these fucking amazing one stand or not, like David versus
Like,
Goliath.
yeah.
It's impressive as shit. And then he eventually,
like 1 to 100.
yeah, eventually he got with the people. I believe it's called Aragon, not the Lord of the Rings, but Aragon was. I might be mispronouncing it. I might be completely wrong. It was essentially the Spanish and Portuguese proto royalty. So the people that are now Spain and Portugal. He's the reason Portugal is its own country. So he basically rallied a ton of Christian knights, and they fucking slowly exterminated the Moors and the Moorish influence in Iberia, which is the peninsula of Spain and Portugal. He is the reason why Christian kingdoms existed afterwards. And he wound up leading these Christian armies against the Moors, pushing them all the way out. And he's the reason why the Spanish monarchy rose to power, discovered America, wound up providing one of the most powerful fleets in the world. He directly led to the colonization of South America, the enclaves of Quetta and some other European enclaves that are in North Africa. He is the reason that there is no Muslim presence in Europe. Not saying that's a good or a bad thing, but he influenced history beyond what I can. And he is tiny in comparison to, smaller than, say, Yugoslavia. Definitely smaller than Genghis Khan. He had more of an effect than Tito. He had more of an effect than Moshe Dayan. And the cards were stacked against him. Out of all of these dudes, this dude was the underdog that, again, I like to, the Moors had occupied the Iberian Peninsula. So that's the state. That's the man. El Cid was the dude that was like, fuck you, I'm not going to do what you tell me. But he was smart. He played both sides. He played the Muslims against the Muslims. He played Christians against the Muslims, and then he played basically his royalty against the people. He was basically a gun for hire, sword for hire.
Yeah.
But El Cid, there's a movie, I can't remember if it's from the 60s or the 70s, but it's a cool ass movie. Not enough is taught about him, and when it comes to military leadership,
This is the first time I've heard of it.
Political wrangling. Yeah, El Cid, EL space CID, El Cid. I don't know what it means. It's Spanish, but he is the reason
The Cid.
Queen Isabella was like, yo, fucking Columbus, go over there and fucking take that block. He's the reason that they had a Spanish monarchy. He's the reason why Europeans discovered America and the Islam didn't. He's the reason that Islam didn't spread further than it did into Europe. He's all around, like, he's impressive. His military victories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And for the time, he wasn't a piece of shit. Like, he didn't execute prisoners. He didn't wipe out entire cities. He was a very fair person. I would say out of all these people, 10 out of 10. Awesome.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. And we can do an episode on shitty leaders that have been propagandized. Like, I would love to sit down and talk about General Mattis and how big of a piece of shit that guy is when it comes to the military industrial complex, when it comes to him just, they're leaving Green Berets to die in Afghanistan during the initial invasion of Afghanistan. The staff officers that have worked for him, that there's nobody that works for him that wasn't a piece of shit, that didn't get promoted, and all his fucking good dudes wound up leaving.
That sounds oddly familiar.
At the end of the day, all these dudes had qualities that set them aside from other leaders. It propelled them above and beyond what was expected. And when the circumstances came to fruition, they managed to achieve victory. They prevailed. And that's what's impressive about these guys. Again, there's some of the most terrible people I've met in my life in the military. Awesome gunfighters. A real good friend of mine who passed away. He was an amazing fucking dude. absolute shit show as a human being back here. Break glass in case of war.
That was
tactical
literally about to
genius.
say that.
Yeah. And I can appreciate that. I can also appreciate the officers that I worked for and that were amazing tactically. And when they approached problems, they didn't create more. It was a joy to work for them because I didn't have to suffer through what 99% of the military suffered through. Now that came at the expense of their careers because you can't question, you can't be unique like Joe that runs Poorhouse.
Yeah.
Like people are like, oh, he's a shitbag because he asked why. When you gave this man a mission, he not only would plan it and execute it, but he would raise. He would
wonder. Yeah, he would ask the question why, which is
well. He also took care of his troops, and people are like, "What are you fucking crazy?" Like, most Marine officers see their subordinates as expendable. They do.
Yeah,
and that goes tenfold in special operations. You either have a cancerous, toxic leader that is just propelled by his own career. That's just
his
selfish.
own ego,
exactly,
which goes back to humility and leadership.
And
which I deem that to be one of the most important traits as a leader.
Yeah.
Because Joe, for example,
I love Joe.
Do you think that when he's sitting here questioning these orders and stuff like that, do you think
he didn't question orders?
Well, not question, but say why? Like, why are we doing this? Like, why is this way?
Just
why don't we do it this way?
Just the mere fact of him being like, can you explain that? Marine officers don't like to explain shit to their subordinates. They're like, I should tell you and you should do it. Message to Garcia. Well, you just completely invalidated any analysis of the variables. So
exactly.
For course of action development, you analyze everything, your Okakoa, so that you can plan. Well, if that shit's fucked from Jump Street as a subordinate leader, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to follow the plan.
Yep.
So being able to say, hey, 2 tiers up, my direct and then my direct leadership and the leadership above them. What is the mission? What is the criteria for success? That's not an insubordinate thing to ask. That's fucking common sense. But they don't like that. They want a lapdog. They want somebody that says yes.
They want a yes man.
And what I am happy to see is just like Mark and just like Joe and some of the guys that we've had come on the show and guys that are still in. One of my instructors who lost a leg, he's still jumping out of planes. He's still leading troops. He's these are amazing human beings. And I wish there was more visibility on them, but there isn't because you have dickheads that run around screaming about boats. You have dickheads running around saying like, I don't think a 19-year-old should own a gun.
Yeah.
He goes out for training in Texas. I'm talking about a certain 19th Special Forces guy. Goes out for training in Texas and then makes it appear like he's fighting in somewhere. And people just fucking eat that shit up. Nobody knows about the guys that are in ISA. There's a really cool podcast called The Team House. It's an amazing podcast. There's the Anti-Hero podcast. There's a lot of people in special operations that are jaded by the illusion of all these fucking cocksuckers that are out there to make $1. Specifically, the one that I hate the most, who's a giant piece of shit, fucked his cousin, shot somebody on patrol trying to shoot a dog, ripped off the wives of the Raider 7. I can't say his name because I'll get slapped with cease and desist. He's a giant piece of shit. He hit Joe with a cease and desist letter.
Damn.
And he is sponsored by multiple companies that I won't say out loud because, again, I don't want to get in trouble. Giant piece of shit. And
there's way too fucking many of those.
He's the most famous Raider. And there are people out there that are like, look, like he fucked up. We should forgive him. You ripped off the wives of widows. Go fuck yourself. And people will say, hey, Lobo, you're being toxic. I have the right to a fucking opinion. And there are people out there that are praising certain things of individuals that they have either cheated or they have not been humble and they have gotten ahead in life, surpassed other people that did what was right, did what was expected of them. A lot of the shit, like the women that went through Ranger School, absolutely atrocious. The shit that's going on with the basic reconnaissance course, it's become a fucking woke joke. And people are like, well, stop being toxic, give people praise where they deserve it. I fucking will. When you pass the standard, when you lower the standard and you cheat, and then I call you out.
I was about to say there's definitely a difference between passing the standard and lowering the standard so that individual can fucking pass it.
So like one of the guys,
And that's the way over the past I'm gonna call it market at 10 years. That's how it's been across the board.
What was we defined Cody Alford.
Yep.
Amazing human being. Cares about people, cares about mental health. I wish people knew his name from MARSOC instead of the other guy. And like, I don't have direct contact with him.
I know someone who does.
But I will say this. The way that he is influencing people is the same way he did it in the Marines. He's only a couple years older than me. And when he was talking, he basically broke my brain. He came up to all of us when we were instructors at the schoolhouse and he said, "You are no longer the mission. You don't, like, you matter, but you don't.
Yeah.
The next generation is coming in. Your ship has sailed. You're an instructor. You'll go back to the teams, but our priority are the new guys that are coming from assessment and selection." Like assessment and selection branch, when I was at the Raider Training Center, people shit on them. They're like, "Oh, they get to wear civilian clothes." Well, that's part of their job. Well, they get picks of all the schools. Yeah. Well, if you don't have a selection branch, you don't have operators. You don't have candidates. It's the inception. It's an analogy. It's the uterus. You know,
Yeah.
You're not going to have anybody in any special operations unit if you don't have an assessment and selection branch. That's just why they got precedence. But he's talking to us about this, and he's talking about because he was a math sergeant. He was getting out. When I was sitting on a promotion board with him, most of the people are like, "All right, what's your gig line or distance of ribbons and shit like that?" Dumb shit that's just, it's on the lowest portion of Bloom's taxonomy, which is to basically regurgitate. I see it says red, that is red. Okay, I say red. And the top of Bloom's taxonomy, which is what Cody Alford operates at. I wish I had his brain. And mine's a little broken. It's broken. One thing
it's broken, but we love it.
I appreciate him and his fight for head injuries, because having 3 TBIs myself has changed me as a person. And Cody has been a staunch advocate for mental health. And nobody gives a fuck. Nobody gives a fuck. And you can see it in the military. You can see it in law enforcement, and you can see it in the emergency response. People are fucking tired. And society, we have saved so many pieces of shit in our society that shouldn't be alive, that it's a cancer. And you see this every single day. It's why, like, a lot of these cops, a lot of these EMS, they're jaded because they have to see people multiple times a day on the worst day of their life. They're having to experience trauma daily, and nobody gives a fuck. They get paid dog shit. You get paid more as a convicted fucking rapist and Wagner mercenary than you do as a cop here in the United States. 340 million Americans depend on 950,000 police officers. All these people that talk shit about cops and talk shit about EMS are the first little pussies to pick up a phone when shit goes sideways.
Exactly. They'll run their fucking mouth until they need them.
Exactly. But I can appreciate good leadership. Now, I talked about the ones that were amazing and that shitty aspects of it. Cody Alford's an amazing leader. Mark Arrington's an amazing leader. Chase Roth, an amazing leader. Cedric Jefferson, I think he's still in. Amazing fucking leader over at the Marine Raiders. Fucking awesome. I'm so glad he stayed in because he can actually make a difference. We were saying guys are like, I'm going to change this. And then the next thing you know is they're like burnt out.
Yeah. Like they're burnt out. They're either burnt out or they cave to the standard that everybody else has set.
Yeah.
And then they just follow that line.
And you can also appreciate certain aspects of the civilian world, podcasting and information, like the Edge of History podcast. Mm-hmm. The guy's I think a high school teacher, and he is fucking amazing. But then you can also flip it and look on the mental health aspect of it. Like my fiance listens to a lot of these self-help things, And she knows to turn it off because when we get in the car together, I'll just start making fun of these people. But it is truly admirable to care about the people around you. And that's what makes a really good leader. Not just that I take care of my platoon or my team or my element or my department or my squad. I want to influence and change everybody that's around me, regardless of whether I benefit from it. I think one of the coolest things was we were doing that promotion board with Cody Alford, and the guys that were getting promoted weren't operators. They weren't in our immediate chain of command, but he saw it as his duty, like his existence right then and there, why he's getting paid, to make this place better by getting the right person.
Exactly.
Not the best person, the right person. I'm sorry, I've been on it's been a shitty weekend.
Yeah, from what we talked about before we started filming,
Hey,
I can understand that.
do you guys think it's a smart idea to smoke crack and eat fast food while driving
At 5 miles an hour in a 35
across
so-
4 lanes of traffic?
and not putting the sauce down.
Yes, she was still gripping the hot sauce. I can't make
you
this
can't
shit
fucking
up.
let that shit go. That shit had to have been like on point.
I need your ID. Oh, but I know the law. I don't have to give you my ID. I'm just sitting there staring, and I'm like, holy fuck. Don't do drugs, kids. Don't do drugs. Drugs are bad.
Stay in school.
Stay in school. Send your emissaries to Baghdad. If they don't fucking back down, just go fucking ham bone on them. Build a pyramid of heads. Reduce the CO2
Which we need
footprint.
to do. Which we need to do an episode on that one. And
We
will.
can do this. We'll do the siege
So-
of Baghdad.
I'm gonna go ahead and throw this out there. Episode 30. The next episode we're gonna have Mark back on.
Hell yeah.
We're gonna be talking about
Stoicism.
and then we're gonna take a short break after episode 30. We're gonna be doing some remodeling in here, getting our all of our P's lined up for the next couple episodes throughout the rest of the year.
Dot our Q's, cross our I's.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I had to think about that one. All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Really, you've heard me and him talk about it before briefly about just leadership topics throughout almost every episode that we've done together. So I'm glad that we kind of came together and did one whole one on it. And it's a bottomless pit of information when we talk about it. So it can go on for fucking hours if we say
Yeah,
here.
there's epic amounts of fuck ups. There's so much material to cover.
Oh, there's so much. But we're going to call it today, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Remember, hit that like button, hit that little notification bell so you know when we throw a new episode up. If it ain't broke.
If it ain't,
Oh, wait, no. If it's stupid and it works,
it's not stupid.
peace in the Middle East.
We'd be out of a job.
All right.
Hey, Instagram.
Oh, the Instagram handle?
Yeah, we're on Instagram, not just YouTube. We're on Instagram, so follow on Instagram.
It's at tactfully.misguided on Instagram.
You'll see all my autistic bullshit that I put out to promote the show.
Yep. And we're going to be doing, I'm going to be building a Facebook now. We're doing a little bit of rebranding too. So we've got a new podcast logo.
Oh yes. Oh, I didn't get to shit on quad tubes. We'll do that with Arrington at the next episode.
All right.
I'll just shit on quad tubes. I fucking hate them.
I'm going to rebrand that later. So,
new-
that won't be the logo anymore.
The new logo looks fucking dope. I love it. You did a fucking kick ass.
Thank you,
job.
Daniel Vargas,
Hell
for
yeah.
that. He was one of my old Troopaloops.
Fuck
Now,
yeah.
now one of my best friends that still stuck around through the years. So,
Those are the best kind.
yes, sir. All right, guys. With that, we'll see you next week.